Elon Musk has better things to do
The
than keep you posted.
The scientists
on
come to Elon. Elon, we've done it. Long range plane travel on batteries. He's fucking straight. Get the fuck out. I gotta call Ninja.
Shit, I gotta let Ninja know.
I gotta call Ninja right fucking now. He's keen on this. Ninja, I've got a plane.
Okay, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Watchtime, your weekly podcast where we break down the behind the scenes of YouTube culture. Today, we are getting into a really interesting topic, and we're going to be talking about the concept of YouTubers and YouTube relatability and what happens when YouTubers lose their relatability.
And the flex.
And the flex. And I think the reason we want to talk about this is a couple things that have happened in the last couple weeks that have brought up the concept of relatability. But I think what makes this such an interesting topic is the fact where you think about what makes YouTubers so interesting and so successful. And for me, one of the reasons I always think that YouTubers are so successful is because they hit this balance between relatability and aspiration. And relatability being that people can look at YouTubers that have 100 subscribers or 1 million subscribers or 10 million subscribers, and oftentimes what you can see from those videos is not that different. So there's this element of it that I think allows people to think like, hey, that could be just like me. You know, like I look at you right now and all I can see is that you're in a room with a black background and you're wearing a hoodie and you don't look, you know, like a is that some laser beam merch?
I take the free merch because I'm humble.
But you know, there's this element where it's like, for gamers especially, this is just a guy just like me that loves playing games and is putting it in front of the world. And yet there's this element of aspiration as well, whereas it's like you are aware that they're doing this as their full-time job. They don't have to have another job. They can do it all the time.
You're right about the background because I keep my giant stacks of cash on that side of the camera where no one can see them. Literal mountains of $1,000 notes. We don't actually have $1,000 notes, but I wish we did. It'd make storing it all so much easier.
But what do you think? Like, do you think that is what holds some of the appeal for YouTubers?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's a combo. I think the thing is that, I mean, obviously across, like, all areas of entertainment, there's a whole different spread of where I think people like and dislike certain people, you know? There's certain people, you know, and it sounds weird, and as someone who, especially as someone who doesn't watch, like, WWE, but there are certain people in WWE who are specifically popular because they're hated, you know? They're the kind of people that you love to hate. They're almost like the anti-hero or the anti-villain, or I don't know what it is. But long story short, I think as a general rule, you know, before you go into the whole kind of like niches of popularity, absolutely. If you're talking about what is the generic role that I think you'll find about 90% of YouTubers will fit in, it's relatable, obviously like base level entertaining through their content. But I think the key thing for me, I think where a lot of fans draw the line between where they like, quote unquote, like a YouTuber versus when they like disengage with them is around the point where it sounds weird to go down to something so specific, but almost like they're asking in their head, if I ran into this guy in real life on the street, does he look like he would shake my hand and say, what's up?
Yeah.
You know, like it sounds like a weird way to put it, but I think for the vast majority of people, it's that, you know, you can be aspirational. You can be someone who is similar, yet has succeeded to a high degree. So people kind of like to a degree want to be you. But ultimately, to put it bluntly, you're not an asshole. You know, like people don't want to support someone who they really hate.
No, but I think there's that appeal where it's like, okay, this person isn't a movie star. They're not like singing on stage to millions of people, although maybe they are being watched by millions of people. They're just doing what I could do. Like there's that element of I could be like you too.
I sit at my desk as well.
Totally. And then I think where it gets really interesting is as these people get more and more successful on YouTube. They're going to be making more and more money. Their lifestyles are going to change. They might be traveling across the world more. They might be doing different things with brands. And suddenly it gets to a point where these people have millions and millions of fans, millions of viewers, probably making millions of dollars. And suddenly they've lost a lot of the elements that people liked them for in the first place, that made them just like me. Really, what prompted us to start this topic is the Call Her Daddy drama that's been happening over the last few weeks. And this is the last episode where we're probably going to talk about this, but we really wanted to touch on this last week and we just didn't have time. Who knows? But I think what really got us thinking about the topic of relatability was the fact that these girls very much positioned themselves as the every girl. They were in their mid-20s, living in New York, struggling, talking about the fact that they had to pick up furniture off the side of the street to furnish their apartment, talking about the fact that they, would try and finesse guys to get them to pay for dates and that sort of thing because they didn't have the money to do it themselves. And I think it was a core part of their brand almost, was being this example of the every girl in New York City, or the every even 20-something year old that's just living their life. And the fact that they were poor was a constant theme of the show. And through all of the contract negotiations that played out extremely publicly, it obviously came out that that was not the case. And each of them was making in the realm of $500,000 a year, which really
slightly not humble.
People felt betrayed. People felt like, hang on, I've been fooled. Like, what were you trying to pretend that you were like me or I was like you, when actually I would do anything in the world to be paid $500,000 to do a 1-hour podcast each week? That's crazy. And I think that's where they've really, really run into trouble. And you realize how precarious that relationship is, where you want to be relatable, but you don't want to be telling people everything for the risk that it could make you seem totally unrelatable.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really interesting point. And I think what I find is the most appealing part about YouTubers in many ways is the fact that they're kind of like an 11 out of 10 on the personality scale. They're what people wish they could be if they didn't have to worry about their public perception or money or whatever. Like these girls were talking really candidly about like sex and relationships and stuff, and people were feeling like, oh, if only my life could be like that. Like, they're just like me with a little extra something.
Yeah.
And I look at people like Logan Paul and that sort of thing, and I see the same thing. It's like, he's just like me, but he can swing from the chandelier in his house.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because there's so many YouTubers out there who or podcasts, I think, exactly like you saw with the Call Me Daddy girls, where they get a level of wealth and that alienates their audience. But at the same time, you have so many people like Jake Paul, Logan Paul, Jeffree Star, who achieve insane levels of wealth, and not only achieve it, but also are like, hey, here's my 7 Rolls Royces parked in front of my mansion, where I also like have like a jet that picks me up every day. And like, people love it, people froth it. And I think for me, ultimately what it comes down to in terms of the wealth part of relatability is how you own it. But then there's also other factors into it, which I'm keen to touch on a bit. But ultimately, I feel like audiences don't care. In fact, a lot of the time, audiences want you to succeed, I think, when you're a channel. They want to know, like, your merch sold incredibly well. They want to know that you're, moving up in the world, you're buying a house, and then just being like, thank you so much for the support, guys. But I think what audiences don't like is crying poor and then them finding out that was all bullcrap. Because then you feel used.
Totally. I think it's like that transparency, and people get caught in this catch-22 because they don't want to be too transparent and tell people, yeah, actually I'm making millions of dollars, and risk losing it. But at the same time, if they then find out that you're making millions of dollars, people hate it. And I think a classic example of that has been Shane Dawson. Like, Shane Dawson cries poor all the time. And I remember we spoke about this last year when he was doing the Jeffree Star documentary, and they were talking about the process of making a makeup palette. And it came out that obviously they were going to be making shitloads. And Jeffrey and Shane was still talking about how he has no money and he can't afford this and he shops at Target. Meanwhile, he's putting ads on every single one of those videos. And you and I both know those videos were getting like 10 to 20 million views a video. Like, how much do you think he was getting paid for those sponsorships for like a 60-second role?
300 grand? Conservatively?
Yep.
250, 300 grand?
Yep. Easy. And I think that's where he copped a lot of shit, because suddenly people were like, hang on, now we know you can't play that card.
I shop at Target. Also, I made $10 million this year, guys. Buy my merch.
Yeah. And I think it actually came out, he had to address it because he was like, guys, I am poor relative to Jeffrey. And it's like, dude, come on.
Come on, bro. Like, guys, I'm poor relative to Elon Musk, all right? Daddy Musk up there just flexing on me, all right? I'm doing it tough down here in the trenches with my 8 million subscribers. But like, you know,
For
like,
real.
yeah, it's like everyone's poor relative to someone unless you're Jeff Bezos. If you're Jeff Bezos, you're poor relative to no one. But unless you're that guy, everyone is poor relative to someone, and that's a crap card to play.
Yeah. I think another example of this was the Ace family. And I don't know if you've seen much of them. I don't watch them. I just saw it when all of the sort of news came out about them. But they were a family vlogging channel that completely blew up and then framed a whole chunk of the content they were doing for a period of time on the fact that they were building this new house, and would often clickbait with really clickbaity titles like, you won't believe what happened to our house, with like a thumbnail of really sad faces. And then it came out where it was like, we don't know whether to move into our beautiful new multi-million-dollar house before the landscape architecting has happened or after. And like comments like, you know, we can walk from our master bedroom to our gym without having to go downstairs like our old house. And people just watching this and being like, sorry, what did you just say?
And you like, said, please buy our merch to support the channel. What? Yeah.
Like, it feels gross. For me, that feels particularly gross because you know their audience is so young.
Yeah. Okay. So you know where, when I think it comes to wealth, I think there's 3 tiers to it. There's pretending like you're not wealthy and then people finding out you are, which is always bad. Then there is owning that you're wealthy, which I would put into the Jake Paul, Jeffree Star category, which is just being like, fucking rich, bro. Get on my level. Like, I live this life, you know, like, and people live that as just pure aspirational content. But then I think that the other type of wealth that people really don't like is exactly what you described there, which is Ace family to a point owns that they're being wealthy, but the difference is that there's owning that you're wealthy in like a Jake Paul way, where you're like, I got so much money, this is just ridiculous, let's have some fun. Same way that David Dobrik does it, right? He's like, I have so much money, let's just buy a fucking Tesla and let's give this chick some money, and then we're gonna get a bear and we're gonna go to Vegas and put 50 grand on black, you know? It's just like,
see, yeah.
But
and I
just to finish the thought, then there's the really bad kind, which is unrelatable wealth, which is what you were saying there with the Ace family, which is they're wealthy, they own it, but they don't recognize their privilege in having that wealth. And I feel like that's where people hate it.
That's actually a great distinction. It's like it's having the wealth, and on one hand, being able to recognize how ridiculously lucky you are and how unrealistic it is that you've somehow come into this amount of luck. And therefore being like, I'm going to be like anyone else in this situation. I'm going to make content with it. I'm going to share it with you guys. I'm going to sort of do what, in a kind of joking way, like do what anyone would do if they came into this stupid amount of money. Or there's the amount of money where it's like, you're not recognizing the fact that you're crazy lucky, like, and that this is insane.
Yeah.
Because that's in the past what I have found difficult to distinguish between. It's like some people I feel like can talk about their wealth and some people can't. And Jeffree Star, I think, is an amazing example because he put a huge house tour on the internet, which a lot of people don't do. And it was the biggest of flexes. He's
this
showing
is
his
my
car
literal
collection.
vault where I keep my handbags.
Like, what the fuck?
And you're like. But you know what? You know the thing with Jeffree Star, it was just such a ridiculous level of wealth. It almost can't be unrelatable because it's not a relatable amount of wealth. You know, there's wealth where you're like, okay, you've got like a really nice house. Like that's like, I can understand that. Then there's the level of wealth where you have a vault to keep your $3 million worth of shoes. And you're just like, that's just so ridiculous. I don't even understand that. That's insane.
And then there's the fact that he eats Taco Bell and fast
I was
food
going to say,
all the time.
he sprinkles it in. He sprinkles that relatability in there.
Yeah. And he's like, I have all this money. I will buy all these things, but I'm not too good for, fast food. And these things that like, make me just like you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%.
We're the same. And yeah, I think that's a great distinction.
And unrelatable wealth, where does that come in?
Unrelatable wealth. Well, I think that's where people use it as a flex. I think it's when people are using their money to actually say we're not like each other and I'm more powerful. It's like they use it in a vindictive way.
No. You know where I think people really hate it though? And I think this is the difference because like Jake Paul uses his wealth as a flex, but people hate him for a lot of reasons. I don't think they hate him for being rich. But where people, I think, hate wealth flex is where you're someone who pretends like it's not a flex, even though you know it is. Or at the very least, and this is possibly worse, you should know it is, and you don't properly acknowledge it. You know, like,
ignorance.
I think the Ace family just casually being like, oh, like now we don't have to go downstairs to our gym. Instead of being like, guys, this is like the dumbest thing ever, but like, this is like hilarious that now this isn't a problem, that would totally changes the rhetoric. I think there's things like when you see Ninja and his wife tweet out like, oh my God, like Louis Vuitton just like casually sends us like their entire collection and then we send back what we don't want. It's just like, bro, come on. Like, that's a flex, but you're trying to say it as a casual statement and you know that it's not. And by trying to make it casual when it's very clearly not, you just come across bad. Or like, when it's like the private jet conversations, right?
For me, this is the example and I've brought it up. So this was a tweet that I saw from Ninja last year where I was like, oh, that's not good for you. Like you sound ignorant. And he tweeted last year, struggling with wanting to fly private for time and simplicity, but I understand how bad it is for the planet and want to minimize how often I do fly private. Wife and I have been delayed for 5 hours flying commercial. And it's just like, I struggle with that complexity all the time.
It's
like,
tough.
Do I fly private?
Hashtag
or do I help
relatable.
It's just like, this is a problem. This is the thing with Ninja. I sometimes feel like Ninja tweets things and I'm just like, dude, you could have left it in the drafts, that one. Like,
yeah.
Like, what were you hoping for as an answer?
It's weird because it's like, that is actually a totally fair thing to have. If you're a very incredibly wealthy person where your time is valuable, then it's totally fine to struggle with that. Be like, my time is valuable. I want to get places, but also I'm conscious about the impact it has on the environment. Totally okay. When you start putting that out there to all your like 12, 14-year-old fans who built you up from like when you were like recording videos only like 2 years ago, by the way, in your bedroom, like it comes across as like hey, I know that this is totally not relatable or even fractionally understandable for 99.9% of you, but hey, I'm going to throw it out there anyway so everyone knows I'm taking them PJs.
The funny like pre-tweet to this was him being like, is it possible for planes to fly off a battery or is there not a powerful enough battery yet? Elon Musk replies, yes, but still a bit too limited on range. This will change in coming years as battery energy density improves. Ninja replies,
I remember
keep me posted. I'm like, dude, like Elon Musk has better things to do than keep me posted.
The scientists come to Elon. Elon, we've done it. Long range plane travel on batteries. He's fucking straight. Get the fuck out. I gotta call Ninja.
I gotta let Ninja know.
I gotta call Ninja right fucking now. He's keen on this. Ninja, I've got a plane.
Suddenly he can do both. Fly private and help the environment. Like, it's just ignorant. It was an ignorant comment. Like, a valid comment, but probably not one that you should post to your millions of fans, for which that will never even possibly be a question.
I guarantee there would be, other than maybe Drake, if Drake still follows Ninja, I don't know. Other than Drake, not a single person on your Twitter timeline is going to have any actual relatable input into that. It's like,
no.
The only thing that tweet achieves is a flex and something that makes your fans go, wow, I can neither relate nor will I ever relate to that comment. Thanks for that, Ninja. Fuck you. You know, as opposed to the difference is if you're, you know, someone who I think owns your wealth, you're like, oh my God, guys, we took a literal private jet to Vegas because like, and we like threw champagne everywhere and it was the dumbest thing we've ever done. Like, this is so stupid.
And it was so fun. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Then it's like, yeah.
Okay. So this is something that I want to talk about that is specifically for gamers, I think. Well, not specifically, but I think it can apply here. Because this is not the first time I think that Ninja has made an ignorant comment about money publicly. And just a couple weeks ago, he was on Tim the Tatman's stream talking about how every time he's online, he's constantly getting comments in chat about how his views are lower on Mixer or he's not doing as well. And he had a little bit of a outburst, I feel might be the right term
I actually
for
didn't
it.
mind. I didn't mind this clip. This clip goes into the point that I was saying, where it's just like so outrageous that it's like you know what? I can't even hate it.
So basically, he came out with the comment where he said that he could buy the bank that has the mortgage for whoever's house is giving him shit and buy his house, in which case he couldn't make comments anymore because he wouldn't have internet because he doesn't have a house because Ninja owns the house and the bank.
I own that.
And
I love that.
It was like, one, that's quite creative to just come up with on the spot. Like, I'll buy the bank. Like, of all the things you could say, okay. But yeah, agree. It was like such a flex. I see, I don't mind it because I don't mind people owning it. I think it's kind of refreshing when people are like, you know what, I'm doing well. And yeah, I might be getting lower views on Mixer, but best believe I am completely fine in the money department.
Exactly.
I find it refreshing, but I think a lot of people hate the feeling of something being thrown in their face where it's like, we got you here and now you're talking about like how you're totally unlike us in that you have all of this power over me.
It does draw that fine line, but also at the same time, I think that hating on a hater is very relatable. Like, if someone's being a dick, you just want to be like, you want to screw them over in the most efficient way possible. And I think everyone can relate to that, whether it's like beating them in a game or, if you're a Ninja, buying their bank and foreclosing on their house so they don't have internet to shit talk you anymore. Look, I think it's like, it's that's actually, I think, a really great example of like a flex that is so hilarious. It's not even a flex. It's just like, it's not something that you could actually reasonably do. You know, like things that get epic and things that got Ninja and crap are stuff like when someone like stream sniped him and emoted on him and he was like, I'm going to report you to Epic. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That got him in trouble.
That's good, Elliot. You're making some good little distinctions this episode.
Because that's something that people are like, okay, that's actually genuine. You know, he thinks...
Yeah, it's a threat.
He thinks that he's Ninja and that Epic is going to listen to him and they're going to ban someone just because they happen to eliminate him. That's bad.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, it's literally like being like, bro, I could pay enough money to kidnap you, buy a rocket, strap you inside the rocket, send you to the moon, and then you're never going to be able to talk to me again because you're on your way to fucking Mars. You know? And he's like, you know what? Fuck. Like, he probably does have enough money to buy a spot on a rocket. But also, like, that's so dumb. Like, obviously that's not real, and therefore I'll pay it. So it's kind of like...
Or is it? Because Elon Musk is in his Twitter replies,
honestly,
and
goddamn.
Elon Musk is doing rocket ships.
They probably built a rocket ship battery, and they're working on it right now with Ninja to launch his haters to the moon. First Mars crew.
Hashtag relatable. Okay, I think that takes us into the last kind of section of this, though, which is where you straight up don't talk about your money or whatever might risk you not being relatable.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really interesting one to talk to. It's one that I feel like we can talk to because we have a lot of friends that might be in this position, where they recognize that there is an inherent risk talking about money one way or another. Talking about either I don't have enough money or I do have a lot of money, and then having additional information come out or leak, or just risking your public perception with that as a factor. And so as a result, you literally just never talk about it. You don't mention anything.
Yeah.
You don't show your wealth. You don't show your cars. You don't show where you live. What do you think about this?
I think that's where, honestly, the vast majority of people in gaming really are, because I can understand people in lifestyle content kind of ultimately going down the flex route. You're sharing your life every day. Number one, sharing your life ultimately means at a certain point there will be transparency about where you live and how wealthy you are and what cars you drive.
Yeah.
You may as well own it.
Totally.
Also, being wealthy opens up a whole new like plethora of like ways you can flex, like, or like content you can make. Like, we're going to Vegas and putting 50 grand on black, you know, like bam, content. I think the advantage of like in the space that you and I normally operate is we're in gaming. And in gaming, like other than buying every Fortnite skin when it comes out, subtle flex, you know, there's really not that much relevance between what we do and how wealthy we are. You know, like me tweeting, hey, I bought a Ferrari. Outside of that tweet, like me buying a Ferrari is never going to have any relevance in my overall like channel and my persona unless I somehow integrate it into the content. But long story short, I would say that a lot of the time I don't think it's like a necessarily like unwillingness to flex or not wanting to seem unrelatable or anything tactical like that. I think it's just flat, you know, it's not necessary, which is...
What do you feel about creator codes? What do you feel about when Fortnite creator codes were a big thing and YouTubers were being like, help me pay rent, use my code? Or help me put food on the table, use my code, when in reality, they're making more than enough.
Yeah, so I think that's a point where things get slightly more interesting. I think once again, that comes back to what we were saying about, not James Charles, who am I?
Jeffree Star.
Not Jeffree Star. His mate.
Shane Dawson.
It comes back to more like what we were saying about Shane Dawson, which is lying about your lack of wealth. Like, I remember there were a few weeks where obviously, and I think very justifiably, like Lannon Laserbeam, when he was starting for like 2 or 3 years before Fortnite, Lannon had a whole meme on his channel of like, I'm demonetized, I don't make any money off YouTube, blah, 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 blah. Absolutely understandable, because he legitimately was demonetized, wasn't making money. Then I think there was this weird point right around when creator codes came out where Lannon did, like, once again, it was a really, really short amount of time, but where Lannon did a couple of like call outs where he was like, oh, like, support me because like not making any money on YouTube. And me and Lockie were like, look, mate, like, you know, come on. By the way, my mic's broken, so I can pick it up right now. It's very awkward. We were like, come on, mate, like, you know, you're not demonetized on Fortnite anymore. Like, it was a meme, but you probably, you know, like, tone it down a little bit now, you know, which and I think pretty quickly that is what changed.
Why did you care about that? Like, why did you call him out on it?
Because I think it's frustrating as a creator, especially with something like a creator code where it's like, you know, at the time, me, Lockie, and Lannon were all like relatively similarly sized. And I think it's like, if you're a fan who sees like me, knows I've done pretty well for a few years, sees Lockie, done pretty well for a few years, but then you've got, and we're all just like, hey, if you want to support the content, use my creator code. And then if you have one person who's like, hey, I'm poor and I can't afford rent this month unless you use my creator code. Not that that's exactly what Lannon said, but you know, but it's just kind of like if someone is like, it would be like me kind of coming like being on like, I have a really sick sister called Grace, and if you don't use my creator code, like, I can't pay her hospital bills. It's essentially just like, it's
not
like,
it's not like that. No one's dying. No one ever said that anyone was.
No.
I guess it's unnecessarily leaning on the relationship you have with your fans,
and just like in an inauthentic way. Which once again, it was a very short timeline, to be fair, for Lannon, from when he went to legitimately being completely demonetized, making nothing, to like being like really damn successful. And there was a weird like middle point right there where I think me and Lockie a couple of times like, hey, come on, you know, like let's be real here. But yeah, I think that would be the only time where it's really happened in my circle. But no, I think if you look at gaming as a whole, with the one exception of Ninja, which is why I think he copped so much flack for it, you know, there are so many incredibly wealthy people. No one out there, well, pretty much no one, can tell me like what kind of house PewDiePie lives in. Does he drive a nice car? Does Markiplier drive a nice car? Does Markiplier live in a nice house? Other than the little shots you've seen, no one can tell me, like, no real big gamers out there, with a few exceptions who are like, hey, I bought a McLaren, you know, like FaZe Clan, but they do a lot more lifestyle stuff. They kind of get into that area a bit more. Very few people I know really push that part. Yeah.
It's true. I think about like, you know, and it's hard because I know these people personally, but I think about like Vic or Lachlan or Lannon or you, really anyone. There's not very much you can see online about their houses.
No.
I do think some people are specific about what they'll do. Like I know a lot of people that just have chosen not to do a house tour because they don't want to risk copying negative comments about it. But
yeah.
I guess with gaming, maybe you're in kind of a safer spot because people don't need to know, and therefore you don't need to even take the risk that your reputation could be ruined.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting.
I think the key thing is, if you're doing well, it's not like you need to pretend that you're poor. You know, you don't need to pretend that you're not making money. Ultimately, like, YouTube's at a point now where people can look at your monthly views and they can say plus or minus 30, 40% what you're making. You know, you're making between like 200, 300 grand a month. And I think it's totally fine to occasionally be like, hey, guys, thanks so much for the support. I just bought a Tesla and it's really cool and I'm super excited about it. You know, I think that's totally fine. I think there's just like a level where it gets a little bit gratuitous, where it's kind of like, all right, well, now no one appreciates this.
Okay, we have some really good questions from people that they've put in. So I want to get your thoughts on most of these questions. Okay.
Hit me.
Question number 1. How much thought do you think genuinely goes into continuing to appear relatable once YouTubers achieve a certain level of success? Do you feel like many creators are hiding or downplaying their wealth? Is it more important to be honest to your own success or to seem relatable?
I think it's actually a very small subset that I don't think many people necessarily go out of their way to downplay their wealth in the sense that they're like, I'm poor, when they're really rich. I think that most YouTubers probably just, especially in gaming, don't go out of their way to flaunt their wealth. You know, they're not like, I bought a house, I bought a car, I bought a Ferrari, I got this new chain. I think some people do, and for those a lot of those people, they build that into their brand pretty well. KSI, really good example. He's like, bro, I bought this $500,000 chain. It's fucking sick. But you know what? Yeah. No one hates him for that because he owns that. That's part of his brand. Where people hate it is where someone tries to mix and match being the really humble, relatable gamer guy, with also occasionally being like, hey, I'm on a private jet, you know? And I don't think anyone, I've never seen a YouTuber cop hate for occasionally indulging. You know, like even me, Lockie, Lannon, who generally don't put any wealth stuff out there, once a year, we would get a little jet from LA to Vegas. It's like a little 30-minute flight, pretty small. But literally, I would say, I would say that E3 trip once a year, pretty much everyone probably puts an Instagram post of them on the jet. And that's like a little bit of like, you know, that's like, it's a little flex for the year, you know? And then you're like, and then you're out. And then you're back to like, hey guys, I'm here at my setup, and like, it's chill.
Do you know who I really respected and who I think did this really well is Valkyrie when she signed her YouTube deal and she made her announcement video, or she did a Q&A video or something afterwards, and she addressed it head on. She was like, why did I sign this deal? And she was like, there was a really big price tag attached to it. Yeah. And she was like, I want to support my family and I want to set myself up for the future. And she was like, this gave me the security that I needed to know that I could do that. Yeah. And I was like, I think you did that in a really tasteful way. You addressed it head on. You addressed the elephant in the room that obviously, yes, you're getting paid for it, and why that's important, what you want to do with it. And I loved the way that she did that. So I think where you get into dangerous territory is people downplaying their wealth or crying poor when they're not, and they risk getting exposed.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that. But I think for a lot of people, they just won't address it head on. No. They won't talk about it. They won't do a house tour. They won't take photos of them going shopping and stuff.
No, which I think in many ways often like just pushes it even worse, because then people are like, oh, you're lying. You're pretending like you're not making money. We all know you are. And you're probably like out there buying Lamborghinis with it. As opposed to if you do what Valkyrie did, which is being like, hey guys, made a lot of money from this. And like I made a lot of money and I'm using it to do good stuff, like support my family. Yeah. And then people are like, you know what? Good job.
Okay, one other good question that I think maybe might be framed more for me. But the question is, have you ever had to rein in a talent's ego as a manager to prevent a "don't you know who I am" incident from occurring? Also, in contrast, have you ever had talent be too humble and get treated poorly without speaking up? And how do you balance those two things? This is a really good question, I think, because the second part of the question is, I think, why I felt and feel really passionately about Click was because I think one of the reasons that Click was started was because we recognized that there were a lot of creators in the industry that were kind of getting taken advantage of from brands, and brands would come to these people that have massive influence and say, hey, like, can I give you a free keyboard in return for you doing 3 YouTube videos to your 200,000 people that watch you? And the YouTuber would be like, oh my God, like, this brand reached out to me that I love, like, of course, and I get a free keyboard, without knowing that, for that brand, if they had to pay for traditional advertising to reach that amount of people, they'd have to spend 10 grand or something to create an ad and get it out to that many people. So I think for me, that's one of the reasons that I'm really passionate about finding small creators and helping them grow, is because they can realize the power and the influence that they have to talk to their audience. So I think oftentimes, yes, especially when we're talking to smaller creators or creators that haven't done much work with brand deals or that haven't had jobs before, I think it's a really, really rewarding part of the job to be like, actually know your worth, like you're so valuable. And therefore it's really important that you treat yourself and project yourself as such with humility. But I find that a really rewarding part of the job. On the other hand, I wouldn't say that I've had to rein in anyone's ego. I think for the most part, I'm very lucky to work with creators that are good people, I think. But yes, sometimes I think creators can lose perspective of the many other people that are involved in making something happen. I think this would most likely occur with brand deals and things like that. I've never had to rein in a creator in a public setting or with fans or anything. I think all of my creators are extremely aware and grateful for their communities and the people that watch them. So I've never had to be like, no, or, quite to the contrary. Like, for example, Lachlan is a perfect example of this. Whenever Lachlan does a meet and greet, he will stay till the last person. He hates leaving meet and greets early. So sometimes if we do a meet and greet with a brand or an event or something, they'll say, oh, the meet and greet's 2 hours. But if there is more than 2 hours worth of people there, like, Lachlan will stay the whole time. He doesn't leave early. And so that would be an example of, I think, where I really respect that about him.
Yeah.
With brand deals, on the other hand, I would say yes, sometimes. And it's not necessarily that people are saying like, hey, I'm worth $1 million and they only want to pay me $500,000 or something. I think it's more a lack of consideration for the other people who are involved in making that happen. So it's not just one person at the brand saying like, hey, Elliot, can you make a sponsored video about this? It's like there's your manager that's putting in the time to make sure it happens. There's maybe the people at like that brand's agents or agency or whatever that are making it happen. These people have marketing timelines where they have to have content go live on a certain day because it feeds into when they're having TV ads go live or billboards go live or podcast ads go live.
Yeah.
Or it's when they're doing a whole coordinated campaign
and it's easy when you're
going live at the same time.
And it's easy when you're a YouTuber to be like, I can go live a day later. Like, what does it matter? It's a day later. And then the marketing team's like, oh my God.
Yeah. And I think that would be a situation that does happen relatively often as a creator might be like, well, I don't really like the video, or I actually want to upload this video a couple days later. So if it can just wait a couple days, that's fine. And sometimes it's like, well, actually it can't wait a couple days because you're going to cause a huge amount of stress for tens of other people down the line. Yeah. So I think that would be a situation that, yes, we do. I have to be like, look, there's more to this. You have to kind of play along at the same time.
But yeah, let us know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Everything between what makes a YouTuber relatable, unrelatable, when do you flex too far, when do you not flex enough, when are you trying to hide what your real flex is. Love to hear what you guys think. As always, remember to rate and comment whatever you can do on your different platform, wherever you're watching the podcast, whether that's on YouTube or one of the different audio platforms. But yeah, guys, until the next week, we'll catch you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.